And this Hangout on Air is live. Welcome to Season 3, Episode 1 of the Free Culture Sports Show. We officially changed the name, so we are no longer Tint. The other thing that is no longer happening is we are no longer going to release as an OGG and MP3, at least for the time being. We're going to try to do the video only, cut down on the amount of time that it takes us to produce the show. So what that means is that the three of us here on the show today will have to practice the skills that we have learned, both either in teaching and standing in front of a group, or standing in front of judges in those oral arguments in 1L year. And we'll have to not say and not do things that I otherwise would cut out on the audio. So speak slowly and clearly. It'd probably be hard because we're used to just like going at 90 miles an hour, but I think we're all capable. So we're gonna give it a shot. If it's terrible, then maybe we'll go back to doing some editing. But that's the plan, at least for now. So this show is going to be the EPL preview show, but we are going to also do multitasking. So we're doing lots of new things today. So it's probably all going to go horribly wrong. But we're also going to do our first team preview, and we have Nathan Blase here to help us preview Spurs. So that's what we're going to start off with. So I guess introduce yourself to the extent you want to, Nate, and tell us about what you think what's going to happen to Spurs this year.
Thanks, Doug. I'm Nathan Blase, law student with Doug, or was with Doug for a little while, avid Spurs fan. So it's going to be a big year for the Spurs. We got a new manager coming in from Southampton, Mauricio Pochettino. He's going to bring a new system. Hopefully they'll attack a little more, and we won't lose to teams like Arsenal and Man City, 5-1, things like that. I can only hope.
We're also going to have to play defense more. Right?
That's a given, which is why they kind of, over the summer here, they've brought in some new defenders. We just brought in Ben Davies from Swansea, along with Michael Vorm, in exchange for Gylfi Sigurdsson. Try and shore up the back line, especially now that Brad Friedel is basically out for all intents and purposes. And then on top of that, they just signed last night. DeAndre Yedlin is coming in.
I had not heard that.
Yep.
They
just say again.
It's not. He's staying in the MLS until January.
Yeah, that's what I heard, and that's what they were talking about with all his deals, was that they would sign him on and then loan him right back to the Sounders for at least the rest of this season, potentially for one more. But yeah, that was just announced last night, late in the afternoon. Some other big news with the Spurs was they just got approval for their new stadium, so they're going to start building that soon, which hopefully will let them bring in, more fans, more money, and thus bigger players. And then on top of that, they also re-signed Hugo Lloris for another 5 years, which is pretty big, especially since he's one of the best keepers in the world. But
where do you put him in the goalkeeper spectrum? I think Neuer probably has to be at the top, but then
Neuer's my number one, and that's just not my Bayern fandom speaking. But I'd say Lloris is probably top 5, at least. Probably top 3. Trying to think of who else I would put up there. I mean, Homer is Howard, but I think he's just top 10, not top 5. Maybe.
What about Courtois?
Yeah, he's probably up there. He's probably number 2 or 3. Just trying to think of who else. That's really probably my top 3 is Neuer, Courtois, and Lloris.
What about Sirigu?
Probably still top 5, but not in my top 3.
Fair enough.
See. Should be an exciting year for Spurs, though, especially since Pochettino wants to bring the attack, wants to play a high line, play it out of the back, something that Sherwood and AVB weren't able to do last year.
Mm-hmm.
So do you think they'll give him time?
I think they will. He has a reputation, especially coming from Southampton, of developing younger talent, which is something that this team needed desperately last year that AVB couldn't do. He brought in a lot of guys last year. They didn't really mesh. Hopefully, the new system, 2 new systems last year didn't really ruin them. Hopefully Soldado can come back to his form from Valencia, where he was scoring a fair amount of goals, which is really what we needed last year. We were winning a lot of games 1-0 on penalties, which was not particularly thrilling. Although I'll take a win every day.
So you mentioned some of the players that left for Swansea in that deal. Are there any other big names that have left? I mean, obviously last year Bale was the huge leave, and that was kind of, I think fiasco is a strong word, but they brought in a bunch of guys, maybe some of them just to see, well, some of these have got to work, right?
Yeah.
And it didn't really work. But maybe this year it'll work. So, I mean, there's not been quite as much movement this year. That's probably a good thing. Do you think the players from last year are they gonna gel?
I mean, I think they will. We didn't really lose, other than Sigurdsson, we didn't really lose anyone who would be a projected starter, and brought in a couple new guys who, at the very least, will provide some much-needed depth, considering we're still in Europe, much to my slight disappointment from last year. I was hoping we could do what Liverpool did and avoid having to spend Thursday nights in Europe, but it is what it is. I mean, the starting lineup should be relatively the same, and they've been, granted it's the preseason, it's just friendlies, but they've been meshing pretty well together in those games. Hopefully they can translate that into a run for the top 4, although I'm not expecting it. I've learned to not do that lately. Get my hopes up and have them crash.
Fantastic. Well, I asked the questions that I had about Spurs. Evan, do you have any questions about Spurs?
No. I mean, he did a good job of, I guess, mentioning some of their things that they have set in place kind of to fix some issues that they had last year. They did bring in some players, as you mentioned. I don't know if it'll be enough to help propel them into the top 4 this season. I mean, you're welcome to make an argument that it will be enough. I see them at about the same spot they were last year, just because I think a rocky start with the new manager, but we'll see.
I mean, for my prediction, I had them around 5th. I thought Liverpool was going to fall a little bit just because they have to play in Europe, and I don't know what their depth is. But I think I think Man United will jump back up into the top 4 under Van Gaal.
Well, that seems like a pretty good time, and you can bring up Spurs stuff from time to time. But to move on to Man United, so the way we're going to do this is we're going to talk about United and Liverpool at first, because those are the teams that we're not going to bring in somebody else to talk about, since those are Evan and my clubs. And we have somebody for Chelsea, so we're going to talk about them last. And we'll probably have somebody for Arsenal, so we'll talk about them next to last. So we'll go through we'll talk about City since they're the reigning champions, and then we'll go through alphabetical after City. So you said you had United getting back into the top 4. Evan and I both have United finishing 3rd. Where do you think United is going to finish?
That was exactly where I had them too.
Fair enough. So I guess I'm on duty here to talk about United. It's hard to know with the new manager, with Louis van Gaal coming in. I've heard some people say Gaal. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it. I'm not a Dutch speaker, but I think pronouncing it not what it looks like seems safe. Oh yeah, well it's foreign. You just don't pronounce it like it looks. So I'm going with Hall. But anyway, he's bringing in this 3-5-2, which I think was going to work really well with Ashley Young and Antonio Valencia, because I think they can both get up and down the flanks and they can both defend pretty well, particularly Valencia. We are quite short at center back. if we're going to play a 3-5-2. The other thing is, where does Luke Shaw fit into that system? Is he going to be? Are they going to convert him to center back? Are they going to play him out on the left wing when they want to go more defensive than they do with Ashley Young in there? I guess the other thing is, there's talk of like Di Maria coming in. Like, who does that unseat? Surely it doesn't unseat Mata, but Di Maria is not going to play defense. So if you're talking about having like defensive wingers on both sides, then that's like Ashley Young has been one of the most derided players, but this is the perfect system for him, and so then you're replacing him potentially. But I guess he plays on the left, and Di Maria usually plays on the right. But I think Di Maria can play either side. But I don't really know. United seems to be linked with like everybody, so it's like all the players. Give me all the players. But I think there's plenty of talent there. I thought there was plenty of talent last year, and Moyes just didn't know what was going on. Like, I don't know. It's so weird because he seemed to do so well at Everton, and then it was just a disaster at United. But I guess there's probably more egos at United. So, and Van Hol is not going to have any problem with that because his ego is the biggest. So, they're like, shut your mouth, kid. And the whole Dutch thing, I mean, I haven't brought any new Dutch players in. They got rid of Butner, who was a Dutch player. They sent him to Moscow because he wanted to play in the Champions League. Like, come on, like theoretically next year, United could be challenging for the Champions League. You're never going to challenge the Champions League in Moscow unless like Putin takes over Europe and makes that all happen. So I don't know. It seems like a silly move, but maybe it's just like he knew he was not playing at United, so he wanted to like say something positive when he was being shown the door at United. So I don't know. Do you guys have any questions for me about United?
So what do you make of Herrera that they just brought in? I heard he was looking good in the preseason, although I didn't really get to watch much of their games.
Yeah, I mean, it's so hard with the preseason. I mean they won the Guinness International Champions Cup, the ICC, the GICC, I guess. So obviously they looked. You don't win even a preseason tournament without looking halfway decent. I mean, you have to win those games. So. But it's hard to say with like so many changes. They just change the lineups first and second half, and they played a bunch of young guys. Like there's defender James that was playing some. Lingard was playing some. I mean, like last year, in the preseason, Januzaj was playing really well, and so. But I mean, so was Lingard, and so Januzaj made the first team, but Lingard didn't during the season. So I don't know how much we can really take. I mean, United has needed a midfielder for years. So, Carrick is finally aging. I don't know if Cleverley is going to have any sort of renaissance. He's been in there. And the thing about Cleverley is that how many good English players are there? So they have a quota. They've already got him on the roster. It sort of makes life easy. So even if he doesn't play, I figure Cleverley might just stick around because he's English. English people may think that that's good to have a quota. I mean, I guess most leagues have some sort of quota.
Well, most of the leagues have one. I know MLS does. I think Spain does. Italy does.
Yeah.
At least limits on foreign players you can have on your team anyway.
Yeah, and it's usually like age restricted. So if you have a bunch of kids that are foreigners, then nobody has a problem with that. Well, no one officially has a problem with that. But yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, Carrick is good at what he does. Cleverley is not good at anything. So you got to think that as long as Carrick is fit, which he's not right now, then it's going to be Carrick and Herrera in there. And Mata and Kagawa switching out at the top of the midfield. And then you have RVP and Rooney up top with Welbeck in there. I mean, Welbeck can also play out left, but I don't know if he's going to defend quite as much as the wingers need to in the 3-5-2. I mean, the other thing is he going to stick with the 3-5-2? I mean, they've played it well in the preseason, but will they go back to a formation with a right back and a left back? I mean, that brings in Rafael at the right back spot. I mean, Smalling can play out there. I've always not thought he was very good at right back, but Phil Jones can also play at right back. But they've got to bring in a leader, a center back leader in the back. And Nate, he had to grab his charger. So anybody watching the video, Nate typed in the chat that he had to grab his charger. So he'll be back here in a minute. And he's back. So
Yep, sorry about that.
no, that's fine. I just saw you left, and then I was like, "Oh, what's going on?" And then I read in the chat. So, were you able to hear what I was saying during all of that?
A little bit of it. I missed the last probably 30 seconds.
Well, basically, they've got to bring in a center back, or they've got to change the formation. That's basically the upshot. So we'll see what they decide to do. So, anything else before we move on to Liverpool here?
So you're not taking much out of the GICC win?
I don't know how that you can. I mean, they're playing confidently now. I think a lot of the guys are playing for their spots. I mean, I think last year the problem, or one of the problems, I mean, there were some tactical problems, I think, but one of the problems is that the players weren't playing for Moyes. I mean, they were like, why are you telling us to do this stuff? This is stupid. So I think, they know, and he didn't seem to have the clout. Like it seemed like Moyes was always trying to impress the players rather than the other way around. And now the players are trying to impress the manager. And okay, that's great now, but at the end of the transfer window, when everybody's that's still left is safe, like are they going to still have that motivation? I mean, maybe you have the January window, and then maybe you have next summer, and maybe somebody's place is never going to be safe in that respect. But I just, it's preseason. I remember one year that the Panthers, I think it might have been the year that they went like 1-15, but the Panthers won all of their games in preseason. And I know it's a different sport.
The Lions did it when they went 0-16.
Yeah. So I know it's a different sport, and I know that the Guinness Cup, whatever name we decide to call it, there's actual money involved, unlike preseason. It's like they're kind of trying to make it a real tournament, and I don't know. Yeah, I just don't think you can take too much from it. I mean, last year United didn't look bad during preseason. I mean, and a lot of people have been like, "Oh, it was a terrible season." I mean, they finished 7th. You're fighting relegation. That's a terrible season. Finishing 7th is not a terrible season. I mean, considering the talent they had, okay, 7th is a bad season. But, seriously, people, calm down. It's not the end of the world. So, I think it might have been the end of the world if they've kept Moyes, though. So, they got rid of him. Probably about the time I would have, decided you got to get rid of him. So, actually, the time when I was sort of like, all right, I'm done with Moyes, is when he talked about being like City. Because even though, those words may have been taken out of context, you just have to, at that point, when you've been in the job for, 7 months or however long it was, you have to not say things like that. And, if you're, that lack of composure with the media, then, I don't know. I thought it just shows you're not ready for the big time. So.
You never want to follow the legend.
Yeah. And I don't know. I mean, some people have said, I've said it myself, that maybe the whole Moyes thing was on purpose. I mean, there's they're both from Glasgow, so, he wanted to show the love. But Ferguson played for Rangers, Moyes played for Celtic, so maybe they're not as close as some people want to think. I mean, I don't know. That's some serious conspiracy theory to, throw away an entire year just to, get that out of the way. But maybe, I don't know. So maybe it was sort of well, Moyes can do a good job, and if he doesn't, well, he's an easy guy to get rid of. So maybe it was 6 of one, half a dozen of another.
Yeah.
But a team that is back in the big time is Liverpool, and they finished 2nd last year after basically a colossal collapse, and they should have won the title. But This year, it sounds like all of us are not thinking they're going to do as well. Evan has them picked for 4th. I have them picked for 5th. Nate, did you have a spot picked out for Liverpool?
I had them in 6th.
So just going right down the. I didn't ask you about United, Nate. Did you have a spot for them? Or maybe I did, and then I didn't.
United
just
was
type
3rd.
It. Oh yeah, that's right. That was the first thing I asked. I just didn't type it in. So, well, Evan, do you want to tell us a little bit about how you think Liverpool is going to cope with the Champions League this year?
Well, I like what they're doing. They're bringing in a lot of depth. A lot of the players that they've brought in, they spent a ton of money so far. Brought in 7 players, although Origi's back, going back to France. So really 6 new faces so far. They're still looking to add 2 or 3 probably more players. Moreno, the left or right back, the wing back. It's probably one, and then they're probably going to find another striker somewhere. I just don't know where. Seeing them in person, they have the depth at a lot of positions, except for striker. Lambert does not fit well at all. He looks so awkward playing with them. Like he's this huge, bulky body trying to fit into this system that does not fit around him. So seeing how he's going to be used this year is going to be interesting. They need somebody else to go up top. And so there's been all these big names that have been dropped. First there was Benzema. He just signed a contract with Real Madrid. Then there was recently Falcao. He's probably going to Real Madrid. There's potentially Cavani, although that move sounds like way too good to be true. And then there's Lavezzi, who PSG has said they want to sell him so that they can try to buy Di Maria. So he's motivated, but he's been linked to 2 or 3 other clubs as well. I just don't know where they're going to get this second striker that they need. And so that lack of depth up top after Suarez is gone is going to hurt them. Now they've scored a lot of goals out of the midfield, which is really good. Depending on where you call Sterling playing from, if he's a midfielder, if he's a winger, if he's a striker. Goals from Joe Allen, Jordan Henderson. So they've got goals coming from the midfield, but they need somebody else up top. And that lack of depth is probably going to hurt them. But I do like they brought in more wingers. They've brought in more midfielders. I'm eager to see what Emre Can can do. He looks like a box-to-box midfielder. Looks awesome. Ready to see that. But they just need that other striker.
So I'm going to change gears just a little bit because we talked a fair amount about Madrid players. But if they do bring in, the big names up top, surely someone has to go at Madrid. No? Or are they just not going to play with any defense?
I just think that they're going to, I remember, I think it was on ESPN once, is that they were like the Yankees. They're just going to outscore people. That was back in the day a few years ago. And so that might be how they play. If we win 5-3, we win 5-3. We still won.
Well, it sounds like how Liverpool played last year with that defense.
Exactly. So if you could score 5 goals a game, you're probably not going to give up 5 goals.
Yeah. So what about I'm just looking at the Real Madrid roster here. So there's this Jesse guy. He's 21. He looks like he might be somebody that was potentially on the way out. I mean, this assumes that the players come in. Now, Morata is on. He would transfer to Juventus, so they've already gotten rid of one of their younger talents. I don't know if I know about this Morata guy from FIFA. I know a little bit less about Jesse, who is apparently Jesse Rodriguez Ruiz, the left winger. I don't know.
I don't know him at all.
Yeah,
they only have so much room up front with bringing in James and.
Right. I mean, that's why I'm thinking. I mean, I don't know if he's, the fact that none of us really know anything about him suggests that maybe he's not ready to help at Liverpool. But seems like they might be needing to get rid of some because they brought in Tony Cruz as well. So I realize he's a midfielder, but
Yeah.
he's still going to attack. So no, they did get rid of Nuri Sahin as well. So was he already on loan at Dortmund?
I believe so, because I think he was
Okay.
playing there last year.
That's what I thought. So, well, anyway, we should get back to the EPL. But I just thought that they've got so many things going on over at Real Madrid that maybe there was something there. But do you have anything else to say about Liverpool or any questions, Nate?
I mean, so do you think they actually did enough to shore up that defense? I mean, losing Suarez, can't help you try to outscore people. And I know Skirtle likes scoring against you guys.
Well, they brought in I can't ever pronounce his name because I want to put the R in front of the E. Laverne. I don't know if that's how you pronounce it or not.
Lovren.
Lovren. They brought him in. He hasn't been able to play with the team at all in America, but he was training with the academy over in Liverpool still. They brought in another left or right back in Manquillo, or however you pronounce that. Spanish name's not very good with them either.
From Atletico.
Yeah, from Atletico, and now they're looking at Moreno from Sevilla. I think they're bringing in depth, but I don't know if they're bringing in quality. I'm hoping that just another year of development and maybe not playing Skirtle as much. So they'll be able to give up less goals. I would play Skirtle almost at striker and just let him, go in there to head the ball. But that's just me.
Well, I mean, he is the only player last year to score against the entire top four.
Yeah. So, and those are probably all with his head. I don't think they've done enough, but I do think that if they can play more of a holding midfield, they'll do better. Which is, I think they brought in Khan can play that role pretty well. Gerrard is settling into it, but he is prone to make mistakes, big mistakes apparently against Chelsea and some in the Guinness Cup as well. And the
one against Uruguay.
Yeah. So I don't think so, and that's why I have them a little bit lower. I didn't want to put them out of the top four, but I probably realistically Arsenal is probably going to win their fourth place trophy, and Liverpool will be fifth. But I just wanted to put Liverpool fourth and Arsenal fifth. I think they'll fall out of the top four realistically, unless they can bring in a little bit more depth.
Especially when you have to play in Europe.
Yeah, Europe. FA Cup, League Cup, anything else that they've got to play for?
Yeah.
I don't know. All right, well let's go ahead and move on to last year's champion, City. So Evan and I both have them repeating. What about you, Nate?
I have them in second behind Chelsea.
Okay. So
I just think
were you saying something? Sorry.
Chelsea's gonna. So I think bringing in Costa gives Chelsea kind of the striker they were missing. With Torres being Torres. And they always play good defense, even with losing Luis, which given his World Cup performance might be a good thing. Who knows?
Indeed.
Are we frozen?
Yeah, I think Doug is.
Yeah, probably so. Don't know what happened there. I'm not getting any video whatsoever. So you think that Chelsea takes over the top spot? I think me and Doug
do.
have them at second and Man City first. Has Man City have they really had any changes since last year?
I mean, there wasn't really anything I saw. All they really had was some off-season drama with Yaya and not getting him his birthday cake,
Uh,
all that kind of stuff.
That looks like he's back on a different laptop now. His headphones are probably still plugged into the other laptop, so he can.
Yeah.
There was rumors of City talking to, throwing their name in the mix for like Falcao or somebody for another striker. Do you think they need another striker though?
I mean, I really don't. They scored a lot of goals last year. It wasn't like they were just winning, 1-0 by the seat of their pants every time. They were usually getting, 3 or 4 goals. I just can't see any reason for them to spend the money on Falcao.
Well, it seemed that it seemed like Monaco was only going to let him go on a year-long loan, which is what sounds like for Real Madrid, and if he was to go to Liverpool, it would only be for a year loan, which is odd to me. If that's how the money shapes out, that's how it shapes out. The one thing is that Negredo is apparently in a walking boot and crutches, so I don't know how long he's going to be out. Doug said on his mic.
Yeah.
So I think they would need a striker maybe for the depth with Negredo injured, but he should be back at some point.
Yeah, and I mean, I think they'll be able to adapt if they really need to. They have a very deep team.
Yeah. I do the second year of Jose Mourinho at Chelsea does scare me at their prospects of winning the title. Just because he seems to know how to play in the Premier League. Last year he was getting kind of his feet wet again and bringing not having players that he basically chose. So now he's got his kind of transfer season done. Him sounding prepared scares me. Their prospects of winning the title. I think it is a 2-horse race between City and Chelsea. I think United will be not a terribly distant third, but kind of a
just outside a little bit.
Yeah, no real chance at the end, but kind of close the whole year.
Yeah, that was kind of my thought, and I think Arsenal will be their usual enough to get into the Champions League, but not quite enough to win anything that isn't the FA Cup.
Yeah, Doug, you back with us yet?
I don't know, am I?
You sound like it.
Okay, fantastic. I still don't have my keyboard, so if you noticed, I have my arms really high. That's because the other laptop is up on a platform. So I'm still working on getting the keyboard situation worked out. But I don't really have much to add about City. If you guys are done, we should just go on to our our mostly alphabetical list of the teams. And I put this in the notes, but the original notes are back, so we actually have notes now. But Aston Villa is the first up, and that's because we're going to do Arsenal at the end. And I have them finishing 15th, and Evan has them finishing 14th. I'll go ahead and note here that basically Evan and I are the same for just about everybody except Sunderland, which interestingly, Sunderland was one of the teams that we were off about last year. I think we're less off from each other this year than we were last year because I thought Sunderland last year had a bunch of big signings. I'm not going to make that mistake this year. So, where did you have Aston Villa finishing? No.
I think we lost him again.
Nate, did you have a finish for Aston Villa?
Nah, I mean, I assume they'd be towards the bottom, potentially fighting with that, group for the relegation spots. They didn't really do anything that leads me to believe they're going to be moving up.
Yeah, I mean, so the big signing is Joe Cole, which to me doesn't spell, large amounts of success. So.
And I think when I actually
Anything else?
I think when I redid these, I actually moved them down lower. I always say that the bottom of the table, or at least the ones that aren't, we'll just say from 18th to 10th, are usually like pretty tight, at least these past few years. So, if they win one or two more games than expected, they could move up from 17th to 13th or 12th. So, I just put them right there in the middle.
On the plus side, they got Guzan behind him. He's pretty good.
Indeed. So when you say lower, did you mean a lower number or closer to relegation?
Closer to relegation.
Yeah.
So more of like the 16 to 17 spot.
I wasn't sure since you said that if they won a few more, they make it up at the 10th. So that's why I have to check. All right, Burnley. I have nothing to say about Burnley other than they are newly promoted side. I have them predicting 16th. Evan has them predicting 15th. Nate, do you have any great insight into Burnley's year?
Nope. I figure they'll be, they recently got promoted. They probably don't have a whole ton of money. Didn't bring in anybody like big names. I assume they'll be in that mix in the bottom, 5 or 6.
All right. Crystal Palace last year exceeded expectations. I don't think they're really going to exceed expectations again. I guess we can call that the sophomore slump. So I have them predicting 17th, so not relegated. Evan has them 16th. What about you, Nate?
I think they'll stay up and avoid the relegation zone, but I don't think they'll be making any big waves in the grand scheme of things. I don't think they're going to be jumping up towards those mid-table spots by any stretch.
Evan and I had a fairly lengthy discussion in our postseason show about why on earth Crystal Palace did so well last year. Do you have any insight into that?
I can't say I really followed them all that well. I mean, the extent of my knowledge about them was they seem to have some pretty solid, fan support and decent coaching, which can, that can mean a lot considering what Van Gaal did with the Netherlands in the World Cup. They weren't expected to make it that far, and yet he got them to the semis. Coaching means a lot more than people think.
True.
Indeed. All right. So Everton, this is one we can probably talk a fair amount about. They haven't really strengthened, although I guess they've solidified some long-term aspirations. They brought Lukaku in from Chelsea. I have them finishing 6th. Evan has them finishing 7th. Last year they finished 5th. Where are you on Everton, Nate? I
was in the 7th spot. I think Tottenham and Liverpool are still better than them over the long run and can hold them up, but I think the 5, 6, and 7 will be a pretty close fought thing and could go any order.
Yeah.
Do we think I
was just gonna say I tend to agree, but I see it shaping up more of like 1 and 2 is a battle, 3 is kind of by itself, 4 and 5 is a battle with Liverpool and Arsenal, and then 6 and 7 is the Tottenham-Everton battle. Liverpool may slide back into that as well, but I still have them at 5th. Everton playing in Europe is why I had them below Tottenham. I think that they'll actually do very well in European competition this year, and so I think that'll distract them from doing as well in the Premier League.
Yeah, well, and I see it as the 5, 6, and 7 is going to be who has the best depth.
Mm-hmm.
Liverpool's got to play in the Champions League. Tottenham's got to play in Europa. Everton has to play in Europa. Who knows? Everton should be good this year, I think, but we'll see how they cope with having all the extra games.
Do we think that Howard is going to continue his fine form?
I mean, I just don't see how he can't. The defense in front of him's more solid than what he had with the U.S. team, and as he proved in the World Cup and has proved in the past, he's a very good keeper. if he's asked to do a lot, he can cover for you a little bit. I mean, he's not Neuer level going to cover for you, but he's not usually going to make any silly mistakes or anything like that. And he actually, he seems to like being at Everton too. So I think he's motivated. Prove him right for giving him that 3-year extension.
So it just turns out that one of the other European teams comes next alphabetically, Hull City. So they made it in by the FA Cup or the League Cup. I don't remember off the top of my head. One of the cups. Last year they finished 16th.
FA.
Okay. So we had this last year, actually a little bit worse, with Wigan getting relegated and having to play in Europe. So it's finished 16th last year. I have them getting relegated, and has them finishing 19th, which is a relegation spot. What do you think, Nate?
I think they'll finish about the same they did this year. I don't think they'll get very far in Europe. So as long as during that time they're playing in it, they don't get into too big of a hole in the league, I think they'll be able to stay up. They haven't really done anything that says this is all going to fall apart so quickly.
That's true. They were only 4 points out of the relegation zone last year. They didn't reach the special 40 mark, which is usually the safe zone. But there were like 7 teams that didn't reach that. So they were fortunate, I think, not to be relegated. They did lose. They lost 21 games in the Premier League and only drew 7. So they were able to win more. They won 10, but they lost a lot of games, and maybe that was because they were trying so hard in the FA Cup, maybe the League Cup. So I don't know where their values will be, and if they slip only 4 points. Well, it looks like they would have needed 5 with the goal differential, but if they slip only like 3 or 4 points, they could be relegated. So it comes down to what do they value, staying up or trying hard in these competitions.
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough part for those lower level or the lower table teams is, you need to make some, if you want to stay up, you got to make some money, and you do get money yet if you relegate, but you get more if you win or get far in the FA Cup, you get far in all those competitions. So, theoretically they could get relegated but still be all right for the long term. Like you said, we'll see what they value the most.
Even if they do value the European competition, do they have any chance? I mean, it seems like valuing the European competition would be a silly move for a side like Hull.
I can't imagine they'll get very far in it. I just don't see any of those smaller sides going very far because, you got all the people that just got knocked out of the Champions League dropping in. You'll have more of that later on. It's just going to be, too much at the top there, especially since it's an extended campaign versus the FA Cup, which is usually you just got to win one and you can move on.
Mm-hmm. Well, they are in the playoff round, which is coming up actually, the 21st and the 28th. So the opposition at that point, they could easily get past probably fielding a lesser team, especially as the Premier League's kicking off. But we could see that they could, not try as hard and get bounced out, only having 2 extra games on their schedule. But I don't like to think that teams would purposely lose. So they should win even with a lesser team and move into the group stage. So that's when they'll start to have a lot more games on their plate.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the real differentiator for Hull. If they get knocked out of the Europa League, I don't think it's going to be a problem. But if they have to play those 6 extra group stage games, then I think that they might have a problem. But we will see. All right, so Leicester is our Leicester, I think is what they keep wanting to call it on Men in Blazers. But I have them
Leicester.
predicted 14th. Evan has them predicted Leicester. Evan has them predicted 10th, which seemed intense. Nate, what about you?
I mean, I think they'll be, like most of these teams we've talked about, I think they'll be fighting towards that, bottom group of 7 or 8. It'll be close. I think they'll stay up, probably about 14th or 15th, kind of where you had them. We'll see. I mean, it's going to be. I get the feeling that the bottom of the table is going to be similar to last year.
Mm-hmm.
Defend 10th, Evan.
Well, there's been a few teams the past couple years. We can look at Crystal Palace last year that have just kind of surprised and kind of exceeded expectations, and I picked them to be that team to kind of surprise and exceed expectations. I think that I usually overlook teams that have just been promoted and think, oh, they were just in the championship, so they should not be one of the 15 best teams in England, so they shouldn't even be in the top 15, and therefore probably going to be relegated again. But time and again, there's one team that shoots up and not blows anybody out of the water, but plays a lot better than expected. Surprises a team here or there, and I picked him. There's no real reason. I have no real foresight or look at who they've brought in. They're just the surprise team that I picked.
I mean, interestingly, I do think they're the best of the promoted side, so maybe they're not quite the surprise as maybe from the other teams. They wouldn't be quite as surprising as some of the other teams, I don't think. But right, Newcastle, last year they finished 10th. I have them 8th. Evan has them 9th. So we both think they're going to be marginally better. Nate, what about you?
I think they're going to move up at least 1 or 2 spots since we're about to talk to them about them anyway. But I think Southampton lost so many guys, they're going to drop and vacate that spot. And Newcastle, I think, is poised to take advantage of that and move up.
Yeah, so let's talk about QPR real quick, and then we will get to Southampton. Evan has them finishing last. I have them finishing in the relegation spots. I just don't even care where the last 3 finish. So the thing about QPR is they are under some financial restrictions. They still have some big names, but I just don't see it. What about you, Nate?
I'd be, especially with the financial issues, I'd be shocked if they weren't relegated, and hopefully they don't drop into that spiral that some teams with financial problems do, where they'll drop long way down, similar to what happened to Portsmouth, or problems you'll see in the SPL with Rangers, where you go into administration and just got to fight your way back up. I know they had to sell a lot of guys.
The one thing that's interesting is they had the financial problems last year, and they were still able to get promoted. So maybe that's a good sign for them. But maybe the financial problems will get worse. We don't know. We don't know how bad they are necessarily. All right, Southampton. I have them getting relegated. Evan has them in 18th, which is also a relegation spot. What about you, Nate?
I just can't see them staying up with losing that many guys, and it seems like their owner is in fire sale mode. Get as much value as you can, sell the team, and then kind of go from there. I just can't see them staying up, losing that much talent, losing their head coach to Spurs, who got them to that unexpected finish. Even though they have a great youth system, they do need time to gel and develop. You can't just say, oh, we have a great youth system, we can put in a bunch of 18-year-olds and we'll still do well. It's just not how it works.
Yeah, Evan, some of those players went to Liverpool. Do you have any thoughts on Southampton and what they've lost?
Well, I do think that Lambert fit in their system a lot better than he does at Liverpool, and so that's why he was able to excel very well last year. Lallana is a great midfield loss for them. Lovren is the center back kind of leader they had, and they lost their defense leader with him. News that even more players could be sold.
Now there's rumors of Schneiderline and Rodriguez going to Tottenham.
And it looks bad, and I do think that it's the owner. I think Men in Blazers commented on this. I think that's where I heard it from. Is that it's a female owner who got it because her father or grandfather died or something, and so she's just selling all the players. She's made like £100 million off of selling players. So good for her. Bad for Southampton.
Yep.
I've also heard that Fonte might be heading out as well. But at this point, there's probably rumors about every Southampton player leaving.
Well,
and they've done it.
There's even rumors about Pochettino, as he left, telling the players to get out when they can.
The thing that too is that if they were going to try to replace the players, they're doing it all wrong. You should bring in the players and then sell. I mean, that's what Tottenham did last year, to a certain extent at least, is they bought players assuming the Mitchell transfer was going to go through, and that way the prices don't go up, because the prices are all going to go up with Southampton now, because all the clubs that they might buy from are going to be like, well, you have the money if you don't have any players, so if you want the players, give us the money.
Yeah.
Anything else to say about Southampton before we move on to Stoke America?
Nope.
So they lost Edu, so they're less Stoke America than they were. Brek Shea is still there.
Cameron's still there.
They still try to get Agudelo every transfer window, and that doesn't work every transfer window. So I don't know what Agudelo's deal is, but maybe eventually he'll be a Stoke City player. So, but I've finished 9th. Evan has him finishing 8th. What about you, Nate?
About the same. Like I said, they're another team that's going to fill that Southampton void when Newcastle moves up. I think it'll be them and Newcastle, 8 and 9 in some order. Maybe 10, but I'd be more inclined to go 8 and 9. And a lot of people are really high on them this year, so we'll see. Depends on how they hold up. On Stoke, yeah. There seems to be a lot of hype going around, at least as far as I've seen on the internet.
So why the hype? I mean, they finished 9th last year, so I mean that's not bad, but it's not setting the world on fire either.
Who knows? Sometimes teams just get that, people pick a dark horse, and, that was the same thing with Belgium in the World Cup, People latch onto a dark horse that has some talent, think they can maybe make some waves if, a few games go their way. That didn't last time around.
Fair enough. Anything else to say about Stoke before we move on to Sunderland?
I was just looking to see who they brought in. They brought in Steve Sidwell, Phil Bardsley, Diouf, Texera, and another person from Barcelona that I can't pronounce their name. And I'm looking at who they've lost. Doesn't look like they've lost a whole lot. Etherington and Dawson, those are names that I at least know of. They were lost on, they were released. So don't know what that was about. They look like they've
confusing that with Michael Dawson.
Maybe I am. I could be, actually.
Because Michael Dawson plays for Spurs.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably who I'm thinking of then. So it looks like they've brought in some good talent and haven't really lost anything. So maybe they could shoot up even higher than 8th, but I think it's just going to be tough to crack that top 7.
Yeah, I agree. I think 8 or 9 is right, but get a few breaks, you can do a lot.
Sweet. All right, Sunderland. So everybody here is a big Josie fan. He didn't really make it happen last year. So I have him finishing 13th. Evan has them finishing 17th. Last year they were 14th, so I think they might be a little bit better or maybe the competition is just not as good. And Evan thinks they're going to drop. So, what about you, Nick?
As much as I want to say I want to see Josie, keep up, I just can't see them staying where they were. I'm hoping they don't get relegated, but I think they're going to be in that fight, especially if they're not getting, if the service is as good as it was last year, they aren't going to score a whole lot. And
right.
I hope Josie succeeds, and I hope he scores a bunch of goals and Sunderland lights the world on fire. I just don't think realistically it's going to happen.
So last year, I thought that they had brought in a lot of talent, and I think maybe it didn't gel much like it didn't at Spurs. I mean, the talent levels are different. That's why they finished at different places in the table. But and also, the whole thing with the manager was sort of crazy at Sunderland. If they stay stable with their manager, and they allow those players to gel, well, that's why I think they might be a little safer than they were last year. I still don't think they're going to be great because they just don't have the talent to be great. But I mean, I guess the other thing is we don't know for certain yet whether Barini is going to be playing for them this season or not. So I think having another striker up front could go a huge way, whether or not they're just outside of the relegation battle or in the relegation fight.
Yeah.
And to me, it seems like Barini has basically said, I'm not going back there. And that's why the move was kind of shot down. So, as pitiful as they were at points in the season last year, if they don't have him and they've lost some other talent, they're probably going to get relegated. They did bring in a new goalkeeper, Pantelimon, from Manchester City. I don't know if that's going to mean anything. And Jordi Gomez. So I don't know. I'm trying to make a case to see them because I do want to see Josie stay in the EPL, but I'm not seeing it.
All right. Swansea. Last year they were in Europe.
Well, Doug, I don't know if you saw too. They announced yesterday that Sunderland and DC United are partnering up now.
No, I'm not. I was clearly not involved with the news yesterday.
Yeah, a lot of people weren't happy when they had Josie holding up a DC United scarf, or at least a lot of the Red Bull fans weren't.
Well, yeah, because he's a Jersey boy, so like half of the U.S. players ever are Jersey boys, but it's just the way it is. No, so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. So and did Josie, was it already? Yeah, I think it already was New York Red Bulls, and not the Metro Stars when Josie played for them. So
yeah, I don't remember.
I'll have to double check that and toss that in the show notes. But yeah, no, that's interesting. I don't know if it's
I mean, it's nothing major. I think it's just a marketing kind of thing, like like Tottenham has with I think it's San Jose and Toronto.
Huh.
Something like that.
Strange. All right. Swansea, I have them 10th. Evan has them 11th. Last year they were 12th. This year not going to be dealing with Europe, so maybe that's in their favor. Hey, what about you?
Yeah, I'm thinking 10th is pretty much about right. You don't got to deal with Europe. They have some talent. Can move up with some of the other squads getting worse. Once again, bringing up Southampton. Plenty of room to move up a couple spots.
I didn't mention this earlier, but the transfer window doesn't end until the end of the month in England. So I could see someone like Boney leaving on a big transfer late in the window, particularly if a top club loses a striker. We saw this last winter when Berbatov left Fulham for Monaco because Falcao was hurt. So Monaco had to have a striker. They paid top dollar for Berbatov. Now, losing Berbatov meant Fulham got relegated, essentially, but they have lots of money. So that should help them come back up.
Well, and there was also talk of Spurs and, if I remember right, Liverpool or Arsenal were in a battle for Boney at one point over the summer. I heard rumors of that. I don't think they went anywhere, but there was talks. And Swansea's got their own issues now with in connection with the trade, basically, of Vorm and Davies to Tottenham for Sigurdsson, because they had a deal with whoever had Vorm before. I think it was PSV or Ajax, or someone is upset because they didn't get a cut of the money like they were supposed to.
Well, that could still happen. I mean,
yeah.
All right, West Brom. I have 11th and has them 13. What about you, Nate?
11th or 12th sounds about right. I don't think they're going to make any waves, but I don't think they're bad enough to be relegated by any stretch to be in that fight.
I don't have anything else to say about West Brom. Either of you guys?
Nope.
All right, West Ham, which I think will be our last one, other than we can briefly talk about Arsenal and Chelsea. But Evan and I have them both listed as just 12th. What about you, Nate?
That sounds right to me. I said that mid-table is kind of, out of what the, if they're anything like last year, they're far enough out of the relegation zone that they don't really got to worry about it, but far enough back from being, top 6 or 7 that it's just not going to be a whole lot going on. They'll probably finish about the same, maybe one up, one down with Swansea and West Brom.
All right, so we'll probably just do the predicted finishes for these last ones. If anybody has any great insights, then we can talk a little bit about Arsenal and Chelsea. But we should have somebody for Arsenal, and we definitely have somebody for Chelsea. Our discussion on Chelsea will be August 30th, and it's the same 10 a.m. time if people want to tune in live. So I have Arsenal getting their 4th place trophy. Evan has them in 5th. What about you, Nate?
4th place trophy, as is tradition.
Nice. Anything burning to say about the North London rival, Nate?
I hope they fail. That's really. I mean, I'd love it if they were dropping, to Liverpool from a couple of years ago down to 7th or 8th. I just don't see it happening. They have so much talent. They just got to score some goals and they'll be fine.
Nice. All right. Chelsea, Evan and I both have them in 2nd. What about you, Nate?
I have them winning.
You already said you have them, yeah. So,
yep.
Well, do you want to defend them winning it? You already did just a little bit, but you can repeat yourself or highlight anything.
Yeah. I mean, it's 2nd year of Mourinho. He's one of the world's best coaches, if not arguably the best coach. He got them to the Champions League semifinal last year. He got them to 3rd place, and they weren't necessarily out of the title race, but it was close enough that they, 1 or 2 games go their way, they'll be fine. Their defense is solid, even with Luiz being gone. Bringing in Costa should bring the goals that they weren't getting last year. I just think they're good enough that they can win it all.
Sweet. Do you have any parting words about the upcoming season, Nate? And then we'll go to Evan.
I mean, hopefully it's good and competitive. I like that it's switched to the, now we're actually talking about top 7, whereas usually we'd be talking top 4. It's a nice change of pace, and, I hope the Spurs exceed my expectations, and I hope Arsenal does not exceed anyone's expectations. We'll see where it goes.
Evan?
Yeah, I'm ready for the season to begin. It'll begin shortly. So I'm just ready to see how all of these changes, transfers in, especially because Liverpool had a lot of transfers in, affect teams, and see how they're they can shape on the field with new players and new pieces. It's actually pretty astounding to me that teams like Liverpool, with all of their transfers, they don't really seem to have, who's starting. They haven't had that much preseason time of what's our 11 on the field, and they've got to go out there in a less than 2 weeks and play a competitive match. So just ready for it to begin and see where it takes us.
So you mentioned that the season starts soon. It starts next week, next Saturday, August 16th. This has been the Free Culture Sports Show. Thanks for joining us.